Grand Central Station rush hour. Mia is racing against time to catch the last train to her dream job interview. Then she sees him, an elderly man, collapsed on a wooden bench, hand clutching his chest, gasping for every breath. Crowds walk past like he doesn't exist. Mia stops. Her train is leaving in 30 seconds. This interview could save her family from poverty. Miss it, and there's no second chance. The old man looks up at her with desperate eyes. Please, help me. Without thinking, Mia drops her bag and runs to him. She calls 911, stays by his side as her train disappears, rides with him to the hospital. What she didn't know was that this dying stranger was the father of New York's most dangerous mafia boss. That saving his life would drag her into a world of blood and shadows. That walking away from her dream job would lead her to something far more terrifying and far more intoxicating than she ever imagined. But in that moment, only one thing mattered: doing what's right. Who was this mysterious man who would change her world forever? What Mia didn't know was that this ordinary Tuesday would pull her into the arms of a monster, or maybe her salvation. She still couldn't tell the difference. One act of kindness changed everything. If this story touched your heart, smash that like button, share it with someone who needs to believe in fate, and subscribe so you never miss another story that proves love finds you when you least expect it. 4:30 in the morning. The alarm rings in the darkness of a small Brooklyn apartment. Mia Thornton opens her eyes, reaching over to silence it before it can wake her younger brother. She lies still for a few seconds, listening to the steady rhythm of Ethan's breathing on the worn old sofa in the corner of the room. He is still asleep. Good. Mia eases herself upright, bare feet meeting the bitter cold of the wooden floor, careful to avoid the spots where the boards creak. This apartment has been old for a long time. The walls are webbed with cracks. The kitchen faucet is rusted, dripping with patient, relentless regularity all night long. The refrigerator is nearly empty, holding only half a carton of milk and a few eggs. But this is home. It is everything they have. Mia steps into the bathroom, turns on the light, and looks at herself in the mirror. A 27-year-old face looks back at her with tired eyes. The heavy shadows beneath them tell the story of sleepless nights and long shifts that never seem to end. Her gaze drifts, without meaning to her left arm. A burn scar runs from wrist to elbow, the skin puckered, wrinkled, and discolored. 8 years. 8 years since the night of the fire that took her parents. Mia remembers it with painful clarity, flames bursting into the night, screaming. She had rushed into the burning room, trying to drag her mother out. But she was too late. The fire had licked up her arm, and when she woke in the hospital, both her father and her mother were gone. Only this scar remained. And Ethan. She had dropped out of college in her second year to raise him. There had been no other choice. Mia draws a deep breath, pushes the memory aside, and starts preparing for a new workday. 5:15 in the morning. Mia pushes the door and steps into Murphy's diner. The smell of coffee and toasted bread hangs in the air. Eddie, the old cook with silver hair and a warm smile, looks up from the kitchen. "Morning, sunshine," he calls out. Mia smiles, ties on her apron, and begins her shift. 6 hours, carrying trays, clearing tables, pouring coffee, smiling at customers, even when her legs ache down to the bone. By 11 in the morning, when her shift ends, Mia counts the tips in her hand, $24.50. She looks at the crumpled bills. This is what 6 hours of labor has earned her. Not enough to pay the overdue electric bill. Not enough to buy Ethan new textbooks. The familiar worry tightens around her chest. No matter how hard she tries, it is never enough. 11:30. Mia's phone vibrates. An unknown number. She is about to ignore it, but something nudges her to pick up. "Hello, may I speak with Mia Thornton?" a professional female voice asks. "This is Jennifer from Blackwood and Associates. We received your application for the receptionist position. Can you come in for an interview at 3 o'clock this afternoon?" Mia's heart stutters. Blackwood and Associates. The prestigious law firm she had applied to 3 weeks ago and nearly forgotten. A salary of $52,000 a year. Health insurance. Paid time off. Yes. "I'll be there," Mia answers, her voice trembling with emotion. She ends the call and stands frozen on the sidewalk. $52,000. That number could change everything. Ethan could focus on school without needing a part-time job. They could move to a better apartment. They might escape this spiral of poverty. Mia hurries home. Ethan is sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by old textbooks borrowed from the library. He looks up when she walks in. Stay home. Okay, Mia says, trying to keep her voice steady. I have something important I need to do. Ethan watches her. His eyes look so much like their mother's, it hurts. The same gentle gaze, the same kind of hope that never seems to go out. You're going to change our lives, he says softly. I believe in you. Mia smiles, bends down, and kisses his forehead. Then she changes her clothes, fixes her hair, and opens her wallet to count her money. $32.75. Everything she has. A round-trip train ticket costs $18. That leaves $14 for everything else. Mia takes a deep breath, lifts her chin, and steps out the door. For the first time in years, she feels something like real hope. She does not know that this train will never take her to her destination. Lenox Hill Hospital, the emergency department. Mia sits on a cold plastic chair in the waiting room, her clothes still soaked through from the sudden afternoon rain. She looks down at her hands. Blood. The old man's blood is still there, dried on her trembling fingers. She doesn't know his name. She doesn't know who he is. She doesn't know where he lives or whether he has a family. She only knows she missed the interview, missed the train, missed the chance to change her life. All because of a stranger now lying somewhere beyond those doors in an operating room. The clock on the wall reads 4 in the afternoon. The interview at Blackwood & Associates started an hour ago. Now it is too late. Mia forces herself to swallow the disappointment, reminding herself she did the right thing. But doing the right thing doesn't pay the rent. Doing the right thing doesn't buy Ethan's books. A doctor in blue surgical scrubs steps out through the double doors. He scans the waiting room, then his gaze lands on Mia. Are you the one who came in with the patient, Antonio? Mia stands, nodding. How is he? Acute myocardial infarction, the doctor says. We are performing emergency surgery. Are you family? Mia shakes her head. I'm just a passerby. I saw him collapse at the train station and called for an ambulance. The doctor looks at her strangely, as if he can't believe what he is hearing. You saved his life, he says slowly. If it had been 5 minutes later, he wouldn't have made it. Then the doctor turns away, leaving Mia alone with her tangled thoughts. She sits back down, trying to steady herself. At least the old man will live. At least her sacrifice wasn't meaningless. But the air in the waiting room changes abruptly. The door opens and 2 police officers walk in. They go straight to the reception desk, say something to the nurse. The nurse hands them a folder. Mia watches them look at it, and both of their faces drain of color, as if they have just seen a ghost. They whisper to each other, glancing in her direction. One of them pulls out his phone and steps into the hallway to make a call. The other remains where he is, his hand resting on the gun at his hip, his eyes never leaving Mia. What is happening? Unease crawls up Mia's spine. She is only a passerby who helped an old man. Why are the police here? Why are they looking at her like she is a criminal? A hushed whisper carries from the reception desk. 2 nurses are talking, their voices shaking. Antonio Moretti. He is the one who... Did you call his son yet? Oh my God. Dante Moretti is coming here. Mia hears every word. Antonio Moretti. Dante Moretti. Names that mean nothing to her. And yet they make everyone around her afraid. She looks around the waiting room. Patients and family members begin to leave, as if they want to get as far from this place as possible. The air turns heavy, tight with tension. Mia wants to stand up and walk away, but her legs feel nailed to the floor. 15 minutes pass. Then the waiting room doors fly open. Hard footsteps crack across the marble tile. Everyone in the room rises at once, backing away like water splitting before the bow of a ship. Mia lifts her head and sees him. The man enters as if the entire world belongs to him. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a perfectly tailored black suit that clings to a powerful frame. Black hair swept back, revealing a face with sharp, cold lines, as if carved from marble. But the most terrifying thing is his eyes. Storm gray, icy and merciless, sweeping the room like a predator searching for prey. Power radiates from every step he takes. No words are needed. No introduction. Everyone knows who he is. Everyone is afraid. Dante Moretti. He walks straight toward Mia. She wants to stand, but her legs refuse to obey. He stops right in front of her, so tall she has to tilt her head back to see his face. His shadow falls over her like night. Mia feels small, fragile, like a rabbit in front of a wolf. Those storm-gray eyes bore into her, cold and judging. Who are you? His voice is low and icy, like the sound of ice breaking in the middle of a winter night. It isn't a question. It is an order. Mia looks up at the most dangerous man she has ever met. She doesn't know he is the underworld boss of New York. She doesn't know he holds power that could crush her with a single nod. She only knows her survival instinct is screaming inside her head. Run. Run right now. But it is too late to run. Dante Moretti's icy eyes drilled into Mia as if he meant to see straight through her. I'm asking you again. His voice turned colder, slower, each word like a bullet. Who are you? And why are you here with my father? Mia swallowed hard, fighting to keep her voice steady even as her heart slammed wildly in her chest. I saw him collapse at the train station. I called for an ambulance and came with him here. Dante tilted his head, his gaze narrowing. Why? What do you want? I don't want anything, Mia said, because it was the right thing to do. A short, mocking laugh slipped from Dante's throat, cold and contemptuous. The right thing, he repeated, as if it were the stupidest joke he had ever heard. No one does anything without a purpose, girl. No one. He stepped closer. Mia felt the air around her being pulled away. Dante's presence was suffocating, a pressure settling on her shoulders like an invisible stone. She wanted to back up, but the wall was behind her. There was nowhere left to go. Who do you work for? Dante asked, his voice dropping into something that sounded like an animal's growl. Who sent you? Rossetti? Volkov? Or some other organization trying to get close to my father? Mia didn't understand what he was talking about. Names she had never heard. Forces she had never known existed. But she understood one thing. This man believed she was an enemy. And in his world, enemies did not get good endings. No one sent me, Mia said, surprised her voice still didn't shake. I'm just a girl on my way to a job interview. I saw an old man collapse and I couldn't leave him there. That's all. She lifted her chin and looked straight into those storm eyes. Your world is probably different from mine. In my world, people help each other because it's what you're supposed to do. No reason, no purpose. Dante was silent for a second. His eyes flickered, as if her words had brushed something inside him. But it lasted only a heartbeat before the cold returned. He turned to the tall man behind him, his face set like stone, arms folded across his chest. Marco, Dante ordered, find out everything about her, right now. Her name, her address, her family, her job, the people she talks to. Everything. Marco nodded and left the room, pulling out his phone as he went. Dante looked back at Mia. You're staying here until I know who you are. I already told you who I am, Mia protested. I have a little brother waiting at home. I need to go. You need, Dante repeated, his tone edged with sarcasm. You think you have the right to need anything here? Before Mia could answer, the doors to the operating area opened. The doctor stepped out, stripping off blood-smeared gloves. Dante turned instantly, the icy mask on his face cracking for the briefest moment. How is my father? The surgery was successful, the doctor said. Mr. Moretti is out of immediate danger. We placed a stent, and his condition is stable now. He'll need to be monitored over the next few days, but the prognosis is good. Dante let out a quiet breath, and his shoulders lowered slightly. It was the first sign of emotion Mia had seen since he walked in. The doctor glanced at Mia. This young woman saved his life, he told Dante. If she hadn't called an ambulance within the first 5 minutes, if she hadn't kept him conscious and given correct first aid, Mr. Moretti wouldn't have made it. She did everything that needed to be done. Dante looked at Mia again. His eyes were still cold, still guarded, but something shifted in them. A flicker of doubt in himself, a moment of hesitation. Then it vanished. You can go in to see him when he wakes up, the doctor added, and walked away. Silence settled over them. Mia felt this was her only chance. He's okay now, she said. I did what I could. Now I need to go home. No, Dante answered at once, without the slightest hesitation. I didn't do anything wrong. Mia felt anger surge in her chest. She had missed the interview that could have changed her life. She had saved his father's life, and now she was being treated like a criminal. You don't have the right to keep me here. Dante stepped so close Mia could catch the expensive scent of cologne and a faint trace of sandalwood on him. His voice dropped into a dangerous whisper. You stepped into my world, Mia Thornton. She flinched. He already knew her name. You've seen my face. You know who my father is. And in this world, you don't get to decide when you leave. I decide. He signaled to 2 men standing near the door. They moved in, one on each side of Mia. Take her to the car, Dante ordered. Watch her carefully. Mia wanted to fight, to scream, to call the police. But when she looked around, she realized no one would help her. The 2 officers from earlier were gone. The nurses and doctors turned their faces away, as if they saw nothing at all. In this world, Dante Moretti was the law. They led her out, down the hospital corridor, into the parking lot. A sleek black car was waiting. The door opened, and she was pushed gently inside. The car began to move. Mia stared through the window as the familiar city slid past. Streets she had walked 1,000 times, buildings she saw every day. Yet she knew she was being carried into an entirely different world, a world she did not belong to. The car glided through streets that grew darker and darker, heading toward the suburbs. Mia didn't know where they were taking her. She didn't know what was waiting for her. She knew only this. Her life had just turned onto a road she could never turn back from. She was about to step into a gilded cage, or into hell. The line between them was thinner than she had ever imagined. The black car glided through the night for nearly an hour before it slowed to a stop in front of a massive iron gate. Mia stared through the window, her heart beating faster. The gate stood at least 5 meters tall, wrought with intricate scroll work, a stylized letter M fixed at its center. It swung open automatically, as if by magic, and the car rolled forward onto a stone drive that curved through an enormous garden. On either side, old trees had been trimmed to perfection, and rose bushes bloomed beneath the soft glow of garden lights. Then the mansion appeared. Mia stopped breathing. She had never seen a place like this in real life. It was not a house. It was a palace. 3 imposing stories with a white stone facade, towering Roman-style columns, and dozens of large windows spilling warm golden light into the dark. The car came to a stop at the wide stone steps leading to the front entrance. The door opened, and Mia stepped out, feeling as if she had crossed into another world, a world of money and power she had only ever seen on a screen. Dante had arrived first in a different car. He stood on the steps, looking down at her with an expression she could not read. "Follow me," he ordered, then turned and walked inside. Mia had no choice but to follow. The moment she passed through the enormous oak doors, she entered a kind of luxury so overwhelming it made her dizzy. The main hall was as wide as a basketball court, with a ceiling rising at least 10 meters overhead. A colossal crystal chandelier hung in the center, thousands of prisms glittering like frozen drops of water. The floor was polished black and white marble, so reflective Mia could see her own faint outline. A sweeping double staircase curved around the hall, its railings intricately carved and gilded, and servants, at least 6 of them in black and white uniforms, stood along the sides, all of them lowering their heads as Dante passed. Yet for all that glittering splendor, Mia felt cold. Not the cold of temperature, but the cold of emptiness. This mansion felt like a tomb decorated in gold, beautiful but deadly, magnificent but lonely. Dante stopped in the middle of the hall and turned to her. "You will stay here until I verify your identity," he said, his voice stripped of emotion. "You have seen my face. You have seen my house. You know my father's name. In my world, that means you can't leave." Mia clenched her hands into fists. "So I'm a prisoner." Dante tilted his head, and a thin, cold smile flickered across his mouth. "You are a guest," he replied. "A guest who is not allowed to leave." He gestured to a servant. "Take her to a room on the 2nd floor. Make sure she has everything she needs." Then he walked away, disappearing into a dark corridor without looking back. The servant, a middle-aged woman with a hard, expressionless face, led Mia up the stairs. They moved through long hallways laid with thick red carpets, walls crowded with oil paintings, and smaller chandeliers that were still lavish beyond anything Mia had known. As they passed a room with an open door, Mia caught a glimpse of a small figure inside. She slowed and looked in. It was a children's playroom, toys arranged neatly on shelves and a large dollhouse set in the corner. But there was no laughter, no life, only a little girl sitting alone by the window, clutching a worn stuffed bear, staring out into the night. The girl looked about 7 years old, long black hair falling over her shoulders, big eyes so sad it made Mia's chest ache, as if she had grown used to being alone, as if she no longer expected anything at all. The girl turned and met Mia's gaze. Instead of fear, curiosity lit her eyes. She stood and ran to the doorway. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice clear as glass. "Are you Daddy's friend?" Something in Mia softened for the first time since she stepped into this mansion. She knelt to the girl's eye level and smiled. "I'm Mia. What's your name?" "I'm Sophia," the girl said, hugging her bear tighter. "I'm 7 years old. Are you playing by yourself, Sophia?" Sophia lowered her head, black hair veiling her small face. I don't have anyone to play with. The simple sentence went through Mia like a knife. She knew that feeling. She knew that loneliness. She has to go to her room. The servant cut in, her voice rigid. Mr. Dante does not allow contact with Miss Sophia. Mia was pulled along, but she looked back. Sophia stood there in the doorway of the playroom, sad eyes following her. The child did not cry, did not beg. She only stood there with the acceptance of a child who had grown used to being left behind. Mia's heart tightened with pain. This little girl was too much like her, alone in a huge house, missing the warmth of family. The servant led Mia to a room at the end of the corridor. It was spacious and beautiful, with a king-size bed dressed in crisp white sheets, a mahogany vanity, and a private marble-tiled bathroom. More beautiful than anywhere Mia had ever stayed in her life. But when the servant stepped out and closed the door, Mia heard the sharp click of a lock from the other side. She rushed to the handle and yanked. It didn't move. She was locked in. Mia stood in the center of the luxurious room, fighting for air. She went to the window and looked out. The city in the distance was nothing but faint points of light along the horizon. Brooklyn was out there somewhere. Ethan was out there. He had to be frantic with worry, not knowing where she was, not knowing what had happened. Mia pressed her fingers to the cold glass, tears rising. She lay down on the most expensive bed she had ever touched, and yet she had never felt so imprisoned. Somewhere out there, inside this enormous mansion, there was a lonely little girl hugging a stuffed bear and staring into the dark. And there was a man with eyes cold as ice, and yet full of mysteries she could not decipher. Tomorrow morning, she would learn just how dangerous this world truly was. The next morning, in Dante Moretti's private office, Marco stood in front of his boss with a thick file in his hands. The room was spacious, furnished in dark wood, lined with bookshelves that rose all the way to the ceiling, and anchored by an enormous desk behind which Dante sat. Morning light slipped through the heavy curtains, laying faint bands of brightness across an expensive Persian rug. "Report on that girl," Dante ordered, his voice still as cold as it had been the night before. Marco opened the file. "Mia Thornton, 27 years old, lives in Brooklyn." He turned a page and continued. "Her parents died in a fire 8 years ago. She is the only survivor in the family." Dante said nothing, only gave a slight nod for Marco to go on. "After the fire, she dropped out of college in her second year to raise her younger brother. His name is Ethan Thornton, 19 years old, in high school, and preparing to apply to Columbia." Marco flipped a few more pages. "She works 2 jobs, waitress at Murphy's Diner in the mornings, and office cleaning at night. Income is around $2,000 a month. Not enough to cover living expenses." He looked up. No criminal record, no significant debt except overdue rent, not connected to any organization, legal or illegal. "Conclusion?" Dante asked. "She's clean, sir. Completely clean." Marco closed the file. "One more thing. Yesterday she was on her way to a job interview at Blackwood & Associates. Receptionist position. Salary of $52,000 a year plus benefits. That could have been her chance to change her life." He paused. "She missed that interview to save your father." Silence spread through the room. Dante looked down at the file, skimming the pages that mapped Mia Thornton's life. A chain of tragedies. Losing her parents, dropping out, working herself raw to raise her brother, living in poverty. And then, when the chance to climb out of it appeared, she gave it up to stop and help a stranger. That meant nothing in Dante's world. In his world, everyone had a purpose. Every action carried a price. No one did good without demanding something in return. No one. But this girl was different. The ring of a phone shattered Dante's thoughts. He picked it up and listened. His expression changed. "I'm coming now." He set the phone down and rose. "My father is awake." At Lenox Hill Hospital, Antonio Moretti lay in a hospital bed with tubes and lines snaking into his body. His face was pale, but his eyes were open, alert and sharp as ever. When Dante stepped into the room, the first thing Antonio asked was not about his health, not about business, not about enemies. The girl, his voice was hoarse but unwavering. "Where is she?" Dante stopped, startled. "You remember her?" Antonio nodded slowly. "I remember everything. I collapsed at the station. Hundreds of people walked past. They looked at me and kept going. No one stopped." He paused to draw breath. "Only her. She was the only one who stopped." An hour later, Mia was brought to the hospital. She walked into the room cautiously, not knowing what was waiting for her. Antonio looked at her, and something lit in his old eyes. He held out a hand, weak but insistent. Come here, my girl. Mia hesitated for a second, then stepped to the bedside. Antonio took her hand, the wrinkled grip trembling but warm. You saved my life, he said, his eyes shining with tears. Thank you. Mia shook her head slightly. Sir, anyone would have done the same. Antonio gave a sad smile. No. I've lived 72 years. I've seen enough to know. No one does that. No one stops to help a strange old man when they have something important to do. He tightened his hold on Mia's hand. But you did. Antonio turned his head toward Dante, who stood in the corner, watching with an unreadable expression. My son, Antonio said. I want her to stay. Dante's brow tightened. What are you saying? I need someone to care for me while I recover, Antonio continued, his voice growing firmer even as his body remained weak. Not a stranger nurse. Her. Father. This is what I want, Antonio cut in, his eyes refusing argument. I almost died yesterday. I think I have the right to ask for one thing. Dante stared at his father for a long moment, then turned to Mia. She stood there, confused, not understanding what she was standing in the middle of. Step out for a moment, Dante said to his father. Let me speak with her. Out in the hospital corridor, Dante faced Mia. He stood there, tall and terrifying as ever, but his voice held a little less ice. My father wants you to stay and care for him while he recovers. 3 months. Mia opened her mouth to protest, but Dante continued. Salary of $5,000 a month. Your brother will be protected and his tuition fully covered. In return, you keep absolute silence about everything you see here. Mia looked at him, not believing what she was hearing. $5,000 a month. Tuition for Ethan. It was more than anything she had ever dared to dream of. But she knew what the real price was. I'm not selling my soul to the devil, she said, her voice trembling but firm. Dante let out a short laugh, cold and untouched by his eyes. The devil? You don't know anything about me. I know enough not to get involved, Mia answered. I want to go home. Right now. Silence. Dante studied her, his gray eyes unreadable. Then he nodded. Fine. I'll take you home. Mia went still. She hadn't expected him to agree so easily. No argument, no threats, only agreement. But she didn't know that inside, Dante was smiling. He was letting reality do what it always did. Reality would bring her back on its own. Reality was waiting for her in Brooklyn, and it was more ruthless than the underworld. The black car brought Mia back to Brooklyn in the late afternoon. Marco sat in the front seat, silent as a statue, but Mia knew he was tracking her every movement through the rearview mirror. When the car stopped in front of the familiar, run-down apartment building, Mia stepped out and drew a long, deep breath. She was home, but something was different. The moment she reached the stairs, she saw it, a yellow sheet of paper taped to the door of their apartment. Mia's heart dropped as she read the bold words at the top. Eviction, notice. 2 months of rent overdue, 7 days to pay or leave. Mia peeled the paper off, her hands shaking. She had known they were behind on rent, but she hadn't realized it had come to this. She opened the door and barely had time to cross the threshold before Ethan rushed at her. Mia, he shouted, his young face tight with worry and anger. Where were you all night? I called you 100 times. I thought something happened to you. Mia pulled her brother into her arms, guilt swelling in her chest until it hurt to breathe. I'm sorry. Something happened. I can't explain it yet. Ethan stepped back, staring at her with eyes reddened from lack of sleep. Murphy's Diner called this morning, he said, his voice trembling. They said you were fired, because you didn't show up for work and you didn't call. Mia went still. The job at the diner, her main income. Gone. She looked around the small apartment and saw the pile of bills stacked on the kitchen table. She walked over, flipping through them one by one. Overdue electricity, overdue water, 2 months of rent. Altogether, more than $3,000. $3,000, an amount she would have had to work nearly 2 months to earn. And now she didn't have a job at all. Mia, Ethan stood behind her, his voice smaller now. How did the interview go yesterday? Mia didn't turn around. She couldn't bring herself to meet his eyes. I missed it. Why? She swallowed hard, searching for a way to explain. Someone needed my help. Silence stretched out between them. Then Ethan spoke, and the anger was gone from his voice, leaving only exhaustion and resignation. You're always like this, always helping other people first. He paused. But who's going to help us? Mia. The question hung in the air, heavy as a stone pressing down on Mia's chest. She had no answer. She looked around the small apartment they had called home for 8 years. Cracked walls, worn furniture, a rusted faucet. But it was all they had. Ethan's books were scattered across the study table, library loans, practice tests for Columbia. His dream, his hope. If they were thrown out, everything would shatter. Ethan wouldn't be able to focus. He would lose his chance at college. Everything Mia had sacrificed for 4 years would become meaningless. She remembered Antonio's words in the hospital. "You were the only one who stopped." She remembered Sophia, the 7-year-old girl with lonely eyes, hugging a stuffed bear and staring out the window. She remembered Dante's offer, $5,000 a month, a full ride for Ethan. It was a lifeline. It could also be hell. But sometimes, to save the person you love, you have to step into the dark. Mia took out her phone and dialed Dante's number. He answered after the second ring, as if he had been waiting for this call. "I agree," Mia said, her voice calmer than she expected. Silence on the other end. "But I have conditions," Mia went on before he could speak. "Are you bargaining with me?" Dante's voice came through, touched with surprise and amusement. "My brother gets a full scholarship to Columbia," Mia said, each word clean and deliberate. "Not a loan, not a debt, and I keep my dignity. No one touches me." Silence stretched out. Mia held her breath, waiting. Then Dante's voice returned, low and unreadable. "Fine. The car will pick you up in 1 hour." The call ended. Mia stood there, staring at the phone in her hand. What had she just done? An hour later, when the black car appeared in front of the building, Ethan had fallen asleep on the sofa, exhausted after a night of staying awake and worrying about her. Mia looked at him, pain tightening in her heart. She tore a piece of paper and wrote a few lines. "Don't worry. I found a new job. A very good one. I'll explain later. I love you." She set the note on the table, bent down and kissed Ethan's forehead, then slipped quietly out the door. The black car was waiting. Marco opened the door for her. Mia took a deep breath and climbed inside. She didn't know whether she had just signed a bargain with the devil, or whether the devil was about to save her. The first week at the Moretti estate passed slowly. Mia began caring for Antonio the moment he was brought home from the hospital. Every morning, she read to him, classic novels in Italian that he loved. Every noon, she prepared his meals exactly as the doctor prescribed, bland, healthy dishes that Antonio often grumbled about and still finished to the last bite. Every afternoon, when he was strong enough, she supported him on walks through the vast garden, moving at an unhurried pace along stone paths between rose bushes in full bloom. Little by little, Antonio began to open up. He told Mia about his youth, about the long-ago days when he had been an immigrant boy from Sicily with nothing but empty hands and a heart full of ambition. He spoke of the decisions he had made, not defending them, not apologizing, simply telling them as facts. One afternoon, as they sat on a stone bench in the garden, Antonio stared into the distance and said, "You know, I've lived in the dark for too long." His voice was low and tired. "My wife, Maria, she was my only light. When she died 10 years ago, I thought I'd never see the light again." Mia listened without judgment, without commentary. She simply sat there, present, letting him know someone was listening. Antonio turned to look at her, and something warm flickered in his aged eyes. "You remind me of her," he said. "The way you look at everything, so clear, so free of calculation." She was like that too. Mia gave a small smile, not knowing what to say. But inside, she felt a thread beginning to form between her and this old man who had once been a Mafia boss. Not only Antonio, Sophia, the 7-year-old girl with the sad eyes, began to appear more often as well. Each day, Mia noticed the child watching her in secret, standing behind columns in the hallway, peeking through door cracks, studying Mia's every movement with the hungry curiosity of a child starved of affection. Mia pretended not to notice. She knew that if she reached too quickly, Sophia would retreat like a frightened bird. So she waited, letting the girl come closer in her own way. On the 5th day, Mia asked permission to use the kitchen to bake. She was mixing cookie dough when she heard soft footsteps behind her. When she turned, she saw Sophia in the kitchen doorway, clutching her worn stuffed bear, wide-eyed as she looked in. "What are you doing?" the girl asked timidly. Mia smiled, "Making cookies." "Do you want to help me?" Sophia hesitated. She looked at the kitchen, then at the floor, then back at Mia. Then slowly, She stepped inside. Together they kneaded dough and pressed shapes with star and heart cutters. Dough stuck to Sophia's hands, smeared onto her nose and cheeks, and then something miraculous happened. Sophia laughed. The clear laughter of a 7-year-old rang through the kitchen, sweet and pure as chimes. A servant passing by stopped short in the doorway, frozen. She stared at Sophia, laughing with Mia, eyes wide with disbelief. It was the first time she had heard the child laugh since her mother died 3 years ago. Marco stood in the hallway, watching through the doorframe. He looked at Sophia, flower on her face, laughing with Mia as if she were the most ordinary child in the world. In 3 years of serving the Moretti family, it was the first time Marco smiled. This girl was changing everything. That evening, Dante returned from a 2-day business trip. He came into the house, tired and tense as always. But then he heard a sound he didn't recognize. Laughter. From the direction of the kitchen. Dante followed it, his steps carrying him there without thinking, until he reached the kitchen doorway. He stood there, looking inside, and went still. Sophia sat on a high chair, her face dusted with flour, decorating freshly baked cookies with colored icing alongside Mia. His daughter was laughing, really laughing. "Father," Sophia spotted him and shouted with bright joy. "You're home! Look, I made cookies with Miss Mia." Dante stood as if turned to stone. His daughter was laughing. The thing he had believed was gone forever since the day Isabella died. Sophia hopped down and ran to him, wrapping her arms around his leg, her small face still smudged with flour as she looked up at him with eyes sparkling with happiness. Dante looked down at his child, then lifted his gaze to Mia. She stood by the table, awkward and uncertain, not knowing what she should do. He said nothing, but his eyes had changed, no longer cold as ice, something warmer, softer, even if only for a moment. Dante bent down, lifted Sophia into his arms, and held her tight. For the first time, he did it in front of someone else. Mia turned quietly back to cleaning, careful not to stare at the private moment between father and daughter, but she could feel Dante's gaze on her back, heavy and complicated, and yet far warmer than it had been before. But in this world, happiness always has a price, and the darkness was moving closer than she realized. Late that night, Mia couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling, her mind spinning with the image of Dante holding Sophia in the kitchen earlier that day. The way he had looked at his daughter, the tenderness hidden beneath his usual coldness. All of it kept circling back, refusing to let her rest. In the end, she decided to go downstairs for a glass of water. The mansion was still in the dark, lit only by moonlight, slipping through tall windows and laying faint, pale streaks across the marble floor. Mia moved quietly down the staircase, careful not to make a sound. But when she passed Dante's study, she stopped. The door was slightly open. Warm yellow light spilled into the hallway, and voices drifted out. Dante sounded tense, nothing like the controlled calm he showed during the day. "Victor Kozlov," he said, the name seeming to grind out from between his teeth. "He won't stop until he gets what he wants." Marco's voice followed, measured and cautious. "Sir, we should increase security. Sources say he's moving east. He may be targeting us." "He killed Isabella," Dante said, and suddenly his voice dropped, heavy with pain. "He won't get the chance to kill anyone else." Mia went still. Isabella. The name cut through the air like a blade. Dante's wife. Sophia's mother. She was dead, but not from illness. "Not from an accident," Marco continued, careful. "Your wife. That was 3 years ago. Victor paid for what he did. We took out half his organization. But he's still alive." Dante cut in, bitter and raw. "He killed my wife. He killed my daughter's mother. And he's still breathing. That's my failure." Mia stood there, her heart hammering. Now she understood. Isabella hadn't died a normal death. She had been assassinated by a man named Victor Kozlov, and Dante had been living with that grief and that self-blame for 3 years. She backed away, intending to leave, but her foot caught the leg of a small table in the hallway. The sound cracked through the quiet like thunder. The study door flew open. Dante stood there, his eyes flashing with danger, like a predator jerked awake. "What did you hear?" he asked, his voice low and threatening. Mia stumbled back until her spine met the wall. "I was just getting water. I didn't mean to." Dante moved in, driving her into the corner. He planted his hand on the wall beside her head, his face only inches from hers. She could feel the heat of his breath, the faint scent of whiskey on him. "What did you hear?" he asked again, each word ground out. Mia didn't deny it. She knew lying would only make it worse. I heard about your wife. About Isabella, she said, her voice small but steady. I'm sorry. Dante's hand clenched into a fist, his jaw locked hard. He breathed too fast, as if he were wrestling something inside himself. Mia thought he would explode, thought he would shout in her face, throw her out, make her disappear. But then he let go. He stepped back. The steely gaze were no longer angry, only endlessly tired. Don't mention Isabella, he said, his voice low and exhausted. To anyone. Mia nodded and walked away in silence, her heart still pounding inside her ribs. 2 nights later, Mia couldn't sleep again. She moved down the hallway, and when she passed Sophia's room, she noticed the door was slightly ajar. A soft nightlight glow seeped out. She meant to keep walking, but then she heard it. A lullaby. Dante's voice, deep and warm and trembling, singing a lullaby in Italian. Mia stopped and looked through the crack. Dante sat beside Sophia's bed, his back curved forward, his hand stroking the black hair of his daughter. Sophia was asleep, but he kept singing, as if the song wasn't only for her, but for himself. Then he leaned down and kissed Sophia's forehead. I'm sorry, he whispered, his voice thick. I'm sorry I couldn't save your mother. I promise I'll protect you, no matter what it costs. Mia felt her throat tighten. This wasn't the cold Mafia boss she had seen, not the man who threatened her in the hospital corridor. This was a father breaking apart, carrying pain no one saw. He wasn't a monster. He was a man who had lost the love of his life and was trying to keep living for his daughter. Dante lifted his head, and his eyes met Mia's as she stood outside the door. She was about to run, but he wasn't angry. There was no threatening glare, only exhaustion, and perhaps a hint of relief that someone had witnessed the truth. He stood, stepped into the hallway, and gently closed Sophia's door behind him. They faced each other in the darkness, a long silence stretching between them. You think I'm a monster, Dante said, not as a question. I think you're someone who's hurting, Mia answered. Silence. Then Dante spoke, his voice low as if it came from the bottom of a deep well. Isabella was everything to me. When she died, I died with her. What's left of me is just a corpse that still walks. Mia looked at him and saw the truth in those tired gray eyes. I understand, she said softly. You can't understand, Dante replied, not harshly, just stating a fact. 8 years ago, Mia said, her voice trembling slightly. I was in the fire with my parents. I tried to pull my mother out, but the flames were too big. I couldn't make it in time. When I woke up, they were gone. I live with that guilt every day. Dante looked at her, and for the first time, he truly saw her. Not the poor girl he had hired to care for his father, not an intruder to be watched, but a human being marked by scars, just like him. They stood there in the dark hallway, 2 shadows carrying wounds that would never fully heal. Neither of them said anything else, but something had changed. The wall of ice between them had just taken its first crack. That crack would widen. The question was whether it would break them or bind them together. 1 o'clock in the morning. A cry tears through the stillness of the Moretti mansion, splitting the night open. Mia jolts upright, instinct already carrying her toward Sophia's room before her mind can fully catch up to what's happening. She pushes the door open and sees Sophia sitting on the bed, her face flushed deep red, tears streaming down, her whole small body shaking. Mia rushes to her, presses a hand to the child's forehead, and feels the scorching heat. A high fever. A servant runs to the doorway, her face gone pale with panic, saying Dante isn't home, that he's out handling business, that she doesn't know what to do. Mia doesn't have time to panic. She orders the servant to bring wet cloths and fever medicine, her voice steady even as her heart pounds out of control, and tells her to hurry. The servant bolts away. Mia sits on the bed and gathers Sophia into her arms. The girl trembles violently, clinging to Mia as if she's a lifeline. In a weak whisper, Sophia begs Mia not to go. Mia holds her tighter, stroking the sweat-damp black hair, telling her she's here, that she isn't going anywhere, that she promises. The servant returns with wet cloths and medicine. Mia lays a cool cloth across Sophia's forehead, helps her take the fever reducer, then cradles her and begins to sing softly, a lullaby her mother used to sing to her 8 years ago, on nights when nightmares stole her sleep. All night long, Mia stays by Sophia's bed. She changes the wet cloth every 30 minutes, tells fairy tales to distract Sophia from the pain, sings again when the child cries and clings and shivers. Time moves as slowly as honey. 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning. At last, the fever begins to break. Sophia falls asleep in Mia's arms, her breathing steadier now, the redness fading from her cheeks. Mia is drained to the bone. She slumps beside the bed, her head resting on the edge of the mattress, her hand still clasped tightly around Sophia's. She means to close her eyes for only a minute, but exhaustion pulls her under. 5 in the morning, Dante comes home. He hears from the servants the moment he steps inside, and he charges up the stairs, his chest tightening with dread. He shoves open Sophia's door, bracing himself for the worst. Instead, he stops cold in the doorway. Mia is collapsed beside the bed, hair spilling over her shoulder, her face worn with fatigue yet strangely peaceful. Her hand holds Sophia's, and Sophia is sleeping deeply, lips slightly parted, breath even and calm. The first thin light of dawn slips through the curtains, laying a pale gold wash over the two of them. The scene is so quiet it steals the air from Dante's lungs. Like a family. Dante doesn't leave. He pulls a chair to the bedside, sits down, and watches them. He watches his daughter sleeping in peace. He watches the woman who stayed awake all night, caring for his child, as if Sophia were her own. This is what he lost when Isabella died. This is what he never dared to believe he could have again. When Mia opens her eyes, the first thing she sees is Dante watching her. She startles upright, flustered, smoothing down her tangled hair, asking when he got back, her voice hoarse from sleeplessness. Dante answers that he's been back long enough to see her save his daughter again, his tone softer than usual. Mia looks to Sophia, still asleep, her face normal again, and says Sophia is fine now. The fever is down. Dante nods, then says thank you. For everything. His voice low and honest. Something seems to shift in the space between them, as if a current has begun to run through it, something changing that Mia doesn't dare name. That night, Mia can't sleep. She slips out into the garden, needing fresh air to calm the chaos in her head. Under the moon, the rose garden looks like a painting, white and red blossoms releasing a gentle fragrance into the dark. Behind her, Dante's voice asks if she can't sleep. Mia turns and sees him in an open collar, white shirt, hair slightly rumpled, looking nothing like his usual cold, controlled self. She answers that maybe she can't, and asks about him. He says he doesn't sleep much. Not anymore, not since, and he doesn't finish the sentence, but she understands. They stand side by side in silence, looking out over the roses. Then Dante asks if she could do it over again. Would she still stop and save his father at the station, even knowing everything would lead here? Mia doesn't hesitate. Yes, every time. He asks why. She says her conscience doesn't give her any other choice. Dante turns to her, icy eyes deep under the moonlight, and steps closer, close enough that Mia can feel the warmth of his body. He says she knows who he is. She knows how dangerous his world is. Mia says she knows. He asks if she's still here anyway. She says she's still here. He asks if she isn't afraid of him. Mia looks up at him, her heart racing, and whispers that she is afraid, but not for the reason he thinks. Dante lifts a hand, his fingers brushing her cheek. Mia doesn't step back. She can't. He bends down and kisses her, gentle at first, as though he's afraid she'll vanish, then harder, more desperate, like two drowning people clinging to each other in a black ocean. When they part, they're both breathing fast. Dante rests his forehead against hers, eyes closed, and whispers that this is a mistake. Mia whispers that she knows, but neither of them moves away. Then Dante's phone vibrates, shattering the moment. He pulls it out, glances at the screen, and his face goes pale. Urgent news, and it's going to drag them into hell. Dante lifted the phone to his ear, and in an instant, the man who had just kissed Mia vanished. In his place stood the Mafia boss, eyes cold as steel, voice sharp as a blade. When? He asked. Urgent. How many? He listened, his jaw clenched tight. Lock it all down. No one in or out. Double security. Now. He ended the call and turned to Mia, worry cutting through his gaze. Victor has found you. Mia went rigid, her heart squeezed so hard it felt like it might stop. Found me? What do you mean? He knows you matter, Dante said, tension tight in every word. To my father, to Sophia, to... He stopped, leaving the sentence unfinished. But Mia understood. To him, she had become Dante Moretti's weakness, and in this world, a weakness meant a target. His people have been watching your old apartment, Dante went on, gripping her shoulders. Your brother, Ethan, he's in their sights. The ground seemed to drop out from under Mia. Ethan? She cried, her voice shaking. No. He has nothing to do with this. In my world, everything has something to do with it, Dante said, his voice hard, his eyes full of worry. Victor wants to hit me. You're the way to do it. Your brother is the way to hit you. I have to go. Mia struggled against his hands. I have to get there. No. Dante held her tighter. You stay here, safe. That's my brother, Mia shouted, tears spilling over. And you are the person I need to protect, Dante said, looking straight into her eyes, his tone leaving no room for argument. I sent people to pick Ethan up. They'll bring him here. You trust me. It wasn't a question. It was an order, and it was also a plea. The next 30 minutes were the longest 30 minutes of Mia's life. She paced the room like an animal in a cage. She called Ethan over and over, dozens of times, but no one answered. Every second was a century. Every sound made her flinch. If anything happened to Ethan, she would never forgive herself. Then she heard a car outside in the courtyard. Mia bolted down the stairs and ran to the front door. A black vehicle pulled in and the door opened. Ethan stepped out. His face was pale, terrified, a red scrape marking his cheek. But he was alive. He was okay. Mia ran to him and wrapped him in her arms, sobbing hard. Are you all right? Are you hurt? There were men, Ethan said, his voice trembling. They came to the apartment, banged on the door, asked about you. They said they'd find you no matter where you were. He swallowed. Then other men came, said they were with Moretti, and they took me. What are you mixed up in? Before Mia could answer, Dante stepped out of the mansion. Ethan saw him and his face hardened. He shoved Mia behind him, standing in front of her like a shield. Who are you? Ethan demanded, hostility rising in his voice. What are you doing to my sister? Dante looked at him, eyes cold. I'm the one who just saved your life. Saved? Ethan let out a bitter laugh. Or are you the reason this is happening? If it weren't for you, my sister wouldn't be in danger. The tension flared between the two men like a match to gasoline. Mia stepped quickly between them. Ethan, stop, she said, her voice firm. Let me explain. Then she turned to Dante, her gaze just as hard. And you? Don't talk to my brother like that. Both men fell silent, ordered by a small woman who somehow made them listen. Mia pulled Ethan inside and told him everything. The shortened version. The old man collapsing at the station, missing the interview to save a life, the job offer and the money she needed to keep them from being thrown out of their apartment. Ethan listened, his face growing paler by the minute. Do you know who they are? He asked, his voice breaking. Mafia. Mia. You're living with the Mafia. You think I had any other choice? Mia shot back, her eyes red. We were about to be put out on the street. I lost my job. You need money for school. I had to do something. Silence. Ethan looked around the opulent estate. The high walls, the expensive paintings, the servants moving soundlessly through the halls. Then he looked back at Mia and saw something in her eyes when she glanced toward Dante standing in the doorway. Do you love him? Ethan asked, his voice hoarse. Mia didn't answer. She didn't know what to say. Dante stepped forward, his voice less cold than before. You'll stay here, safe. Your education will be supported, like I promised your sister. And whatever is between me and your sister, that's between us. Ethan wanted to argue. He wanted to shout, to grab Mia and drag her out of this place. But Mia took his hand and shook her head. Not now, not like this. The silence that followed was terrifying, the kind of quiet that comes right before a storm. The next day, security at the Moretti estate was doubled. Guards stood at every corner, surveillance cameras ran day and night, and the iron gate was locked tight. But inside those high walls, life continued as if no storm were waiting just beyond them. Antonio sat in the garden with Sophia, grandfather and granddaughter soaking up the gentle afternoon sun. Mia prepared lunch in the kitchen, the rich scent of food drifting through the house. Ethan sat in the living room, reading with reluctance, though his eyes kept sliding toward the door as if he were waiting for something terrible to happen. In the afternoon, Antonio called Mia out to the garden. He lifted a hand, his voice warm. Sit here with me, my girl. Mia wiped her hands on her apron and stepped outside, settling onto the stone bench beside him. Sophia was playing with the rose bushes nearby, her clear laughter rising now and then. Antonio stared toward the horizon, his old eyes heavy with thought. I've done many wrong things in my life, he said, his voice low and tired. The choices I made took many things from my son, his childhood, his peace. And Isabella. He paused, drawing a deep breath. But Dante isn't as bad as people think. He's only been swallowed by the darkness since he lost his wife. Grief turned him into someone else. Mia listened in silence, unsure what to say. Antonio turned to her, and his eyes suddenly brightened. "You brought light back into this house," he said. Sophia laughs again. "Dante is beginning to change. I see it." He took Mia's hand, wrinkled fingers warm and steady. "Whatever happens, remember that. You brought light to this family." Mia frowned, unease stirring in her chest. "What do you mean by that?" Antonio only smiled, something secret in it, and didn't answer. Late in the afternoon, Dante called Mia into his study. When she stepped inside, he was standing by the window with his back to her. His face was tight, but when he turned and saw her, something in his expression softened. "I need to tell you something," he said, his voice low. Mia moved closer. "What is it?" Dante hesitated, then said, "If anything happens to me, don't say that." Mia cut in, her heart tightening. "Listen to me," Dante said, stepping closer and taking her hand. "If anything happens, I need you to promise you'll protect Sophia. Take her far away. Start a new life. I've prepared money and documents. You and Ethan will be taken care of too." Mia gripped his hand harder, her eyes burning. "Nothing is going to happen. Do you hear me?" "Nothing." Dante looked at her, swallowing hard. His gray eyes held things he couldn't say out loud. "Promise me," he whispered. "I promise," Mia answered, her voice trembling. The heavy moment shattered when the door burst open, and Sophia ran in, radiant. "Daddy." "Miss Mia, Grandpa says tonight we're having pizza," she shouted, thrilled. Dante and Mia released each other's hands quickly. Dante knelt to his daughter's level, forcing a smile. "Grandpa said that?" Sophia nodded furiously, then leaped up and threw her arms around his neck. Dante lifted her, holding her close. Over Sophia's shoulder, his eyes met Mia's. Nothing needed to be said. They both understood. Dinner that night was the first time all of them sat together like a family. Antonio took the head of the table, Dante and Mia on either side, Sophia in between them, and Ethan at the far end, stiff and reluctant. At first, the air was tense. Ethan kept watching Dante with suspicion. But slowly, with Sophia chattering happily and Antonio tossing in jokes, everyone began to loosen. Ethan even spoke to Dante, though his answers were short and reluctant. Mia looked around the table and felt warmth spread through her chest. This was something she hadn't felt since her parents died, the sense of belonging to a family. Before bed, Mia took Sophia back to her room. She tucked the child in, smoothing the sleek black hair gently. Sophia held her hand, big eyes turned up to her face. "Miss Mia, will you stay forever?" Mia smiled. "Why do you ask that?" Sophia lowered her head, her voice growing small. "Mommy said she'd stay forever too." Then Mommy went away. Mia's heart broke. She pulled Sophia close, kissed the top of her head. "I'll be here," she whispered. "I promise." Night fell, and the mansion sank into silence. Everyone was asleep. Only the wind moved softly through the trees outside. The quiet felt strange, almost too perfect. Mia lay in her room, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. The uneasy feeling wouldn't leave her. As if something were stalking the darkness, she closed her eyes and tried to sleep, not knowing this was the last peaceful night. 2 a.m. Hell opened its door. 2 a.m. Gunfire rips through the quiet night. Mia jerks upright in bed, her heart thrashing inside her chest. The crash of breaking glass erupts from downstairs, followed by screams and the heavy thunder of running footsteps. Then the lights go out. The entire mansion is swallowed by thick, suffocating darkness. Automatic gunfire bursts again, each shot like a hammer slamming into her ribs. They are here. Victor is here. Mia doesn't allow herself fear. Survival instinct floods her body and takes over. She throws herself into the hallway, bare feet striking the cold stone, running toward Sophia's room. Halfway there, she collides with Ethan, who is running the other direction. "Mia," he shouts, his eyes huge with terror in the dark. "What is happening? Come with me." Mia grabs his hand and yanks him along. Now. They reach Sophia's room. The door is wide open. Sophia is curled up on the bed, sobbing, her stuffed bear clutched tight to her chest. "Miss Mia! Miss Mia!" Sophia screams when she sees her. Mia rushes in and wraps her arms around the child. "Come with me." Quiet. Do you understand? Sophia nods, eyes swimming with tears, lips shaking. Mia remembers what Dante told her. The safe room. End of the second-floor corridor, behind the large painting. She pulls Sophia close, lifts her into her arms, and runs. Ethan stays right beside her. The hallway is pitch black, lit only by flickers of firelight rising from below through the stairwell, throwing ghostly shadows across the walls. The gunfire is getting closer. A bullet screams past their heads and slams into the wall, plaster exploding. A second shot shatters a nearby window. Ethan ducks in time, but glass slices into his shoulder, and blood blooms through his shirt. "I'm fine," he grits out, shoving Mia forward. "Keep running." They reach the large painting. Mia forces it aside, revealing a steel door hidden behind it. She punches in the code Dante gave her, and the door swings open. All three plunge inside. The steel door slams shut behind them with a heavy lock clicking into place. Mia drops to the floor, pulling Sophia into her arms, trying to keep her calm. Sophia cries without sound, trembling violently. Ethan clenches his teeth against the pane and steps to the control panel, turning on the security cameras. The screens flare to life, and the mansion becomes a window into hell. Victor's men pour in from every direction, dozens of dark figures with guns in their hands. Dante's guards fight hard, but they are outnumbered. One by one they fall. Then Dante appears on one of the screens. He steps out of the darkness with a gun in his hand, moving like a hunter among wolves. He fires with ruthless precision, each bullet taking a life. No hesitation, no mercy, cold and merciless as a killing machine. Mia stares at the screen, her throat tightening. This is the real Dante in his world. Not the man who sang his daughter to sleep. Not the man who kissed her in the rose garden under the moon. This is a blood-cold killer, a true Mafia boss. But he is killing to protect his father, to protect his daughter, to protect her. Does that make it different? On another screen, Marco is fighting on the second floor. The loyal bodyguard stands in front of Antonio's door, dropping enemies as they rush him. A shot hits him in the chest, but he remains standing. "Run, Mr. Antonio," Marco shouts, blood soaking his shirt. "Run." Antonio hesitates, but Marco shoves him into a secondary safe room behind him. Then Marco turns back to face the enemy alone. 3 more men charge. Marco drops all 3, but the 4th bullet drives into his abdomen. He collapses, his back against the wall, gun still raised. "Protect the family." Those are his last words. Then his head falls forward. Mia squeezes her eyes shut, tears streaming down her face. Marco, the quiet man who had guarded them silently for weeks. Laughter booms through the camera speaker, cold and unhinged. Mia opens her eyes and sees him. Victor Kozlov, tall, scarred, with wild eyes. He stands in the middle of the main hall, gun in his hand, bodies scattered around him, the remains of everyone who tried to stop him. "Moretti!" Victor shouts, his voice echoing through the mansion. "Come out, or should I find your little girl myself?" On the screen, Mia sees Dante freeze, his face draining of color. "Sophia," Victor continues, his tone dripping with pleasure. "I know where she is. The safe room, right? You think that steel box can stop me?" Heavy footsteps pound in the hallway outside, drawing closer and closer. Mia tightens her arms around Sophia, shielding the child with her own body. Ethan stands, stepping in front of them. His hand closes around a large shard of glass, the only weapon he has. Blood is still running from his shoulder, but he doesn't shake. The footsteps stop right outside the door. Silence stretches for 1 second, then 2. Then the door bursts open. Victor stands there, gun aimed straight at them, and he is smiling. Victor stepped into the safe room, tall and terrifying, like a devil walking straight out of hell. His face was carved with scars, his deranged eyes burning in the darkness. The gun in his hand was aimed directly at Mia and Sophia. "Look what I found," he laughed, his voice like metal scraping against metal. 2 of his men charged in behind him. One yanked Ethan to the side and jammed a gun to his head. Ethan fought, but he was forced down onto the floor, and the shard of glass slipped from his hand. Useless. Victor moved closer to Mia, his gaze sliding over her from head to toe with a sick, delighted interest. "So, you're Dante's new woman," he sneered. "He's got taste. Not as beautiful as Isabella, but you'll do." Mia trembled, but she didn't let go of Sophia. The child was sobbing in Mia's arms, face buried against Mia's chest, her whole body shaking like a leaf. "Give me the girl," Victor ordered, his voice cold as ice. Mia forced herself upright and pushed Sophia behind her. "No," she said, her voice trembling but unbreakable. Victor threw back his head and laughed, the sound echoing off the tight walls. "You think you can stop me? A skinny little thing like you? You want Dante," Mia said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Not an innocent child." "Oh, but the child is what hurts Dante the most," Victor said, stepping past Mia as if she were nothing more than a piece of furniture. He aimed the gun straight at Sophia's head. Sophia looked up, eyes wide with terror, tears pouring down her cheeks. "Daddy!" she cried, her voice thin and shaking. "Daddy! No!" Mia screamed, and did the one thing no one expected. She lunged forward, shoved Sophia back, and put herself between Victor and the child. Her chest was only inches from the barrel of his gun. "Shoot me," she said, staring straight into Victor's eyes. "Don't touch the child." Victor froze. For the first time, surprise crossed his scarred face. "You'd die for his little girl? She's not your blood. Why would you do that?" "Shoot," Mia repeated, and her voice no longer shook. "But don't lay a hand on her." Victor studied her for a long moment, then smiled. "Interesting. Very interesting." He stepped back and shouted, his voice ringing out into the corridor beyond the room. "Moretti, come out, or I'll kill them all, starting with your woman." Silence. The mansion seemed to hold its breath. Then footsteps sounded in the hallway, slow and steady. Dante appeared in the doorway. He carried no weapon. Both hands were raised above his head. His face was smeared with blood, his own or someone else's. It was impossible to tell. But his gray eyes were still sharp and cold, fixed on Victor. "Let them go," he said, his voice low and certain. "You want me. I'm here." Victor swung the gun toward Dante, a poisonous smile spreading across his mouth. "Finally, the king of New York's Mafia is kneeling." He stepped closer to Dante, his eyes gleaming with hungry satisfaction. "Do you know why I came here? 3 years. I waited 3 years for this day." He paused, leaning in, whispering like he was sharing a secret. "Isabella, your wife, she was beautiful, and she begged before she died. Begged me to spare her. Begged to live so she could go back to her daughter." Dante ground his teeth, his jaw locked, his eyes burning red. But he didn't move. He didn't fight. "I'm going to let you hear the same sound," Victor said, turning the gun toward Sophia. "From your little girl." He raised the weapon. A shot exploded like thunder inside the small room. But it didn't come from Victor's gun. Victor jerked, eyes flaring wide. He looked down at his chest and saw blood spreading across his shirt. Slowly, he turned. Antonio stood at the side door, an old hand trembling around a gun. His face was white as paper, his breathing heavy, but his eyes were filled with iron. "No one," he said, his voice rough but steady, "touches my family." He fired again. Victor crashed to the floor, blood spilling across the tiles. Chaos erupted. Victor's 2 men spun in panic, raising their guns toward Antonio. But Dante moved. He lunged, tore the gun from the nearest man's grip, and shot both of them down in a heartbeat. Ethan was released, rolling away, gasping for air. Then a gun clattered to the floor. "Antonio." The weapon slipped from his hand. He pressed a palm to his chest, his face twisting with pain. Then he fell. "Father," Dante shouted, dropping to his knees beside him, lifting his head. "Father, look at me." Antonio's breath came in harsh, ragged pulls, his eyes already fading. His old heart, a heart that had only just survived a heart attack, couldn't bear the strain. Mia pulled Sophia into her arms, covering the child's eyes so she wouldn't see. Tears streamed down Mia's face. Ethan stood frozen, one hand clamped over his bleeding shoulder, unable to believe what he was seeing. The room was thick with gun smoke and the copper stench of blood. Victor lay motionless on the floor. His men were scattered around him, but they were alive. Mia, Sophia, Ethan, Dante, all of them, except the one who had saved them. Antonio lay in Dante's arms, his breathing weak and broken, coming in thin, uneven pulls. His old eyes were dimming, yet he still forced them open, fighting for one last look at his son. Dante held him tight, his voice shaking. "The ambulance is coming. Hold on. Do you hear me? Hold on." Antonio shook his head faintly, his wrinkled hand trembling as it reached up to touch Dante's cheek. "My son, let me speak." He stopped, dragging in a difficult breath. "I regret many things in my life." His voice sounded like a whisper from very far away. "I wasn't there when you needed me. I left you alone to carry too much. I pushed you into the darkness when you were still a child." He closed his eyes for a second, as if gathering the last scraps of strength he had left. "But today I'm proud. You are my son, and I'm proud of you." "Father," Dante choked, tears spilling even as he tried to hold them back. "Don't talk. Save your strength. You'll be all right." Antonio didn't listen. His eyes searched and found Mia standing behind, Sophia in her arms. "My girl," he called, his voice barely there. Mia stepped forward and knelt beside him, Sophia still clinging to her, sobbing into her shoulder. Antonio reached out, and Mia took his hand. It was cold and shaking, yet he gripped her tightly. "You saved me twice," he said, forcing a small smile at the corner of his mouth. "At the train station that day, and by giving this family a heart." Tears ran down Mia's cheeks. She couldn't speak. She could only squeeze his hand harder. Antonio looked at Dante, then back at Mia. "Dante, Mia, take care of each other," he said, each word drawn from the last of his strength. "Don't be like me, letting happiness slip away. Don't let the darkness swallow love." Sophia lifted her head, eyes red and swollen, looking at her grandfather. "Grandpa," she cried, her voice strangled. "Grandpa, don't go. Don't go like Mommy." Antonio lifted his hand, trembling as he touched his granddaughter's cheek. "Sophia, my love, Grandpa loves you so much. You have to be good. Listen to your daddy, and Miss Mia." He smiled, his gaze fading, but still full of love as it moved from one face to the next. Dante was crying, tears falling onto Antonio's face. Mia held his hand, eyes burning red. Sophia sobbed. Ethan stood behind them, silent tears sliding down his cheeks. "I'm all right now," Antonio whispered, his voice growing weaker and weaker. "From the day I met you at the station, Mia, I knew everything would be all right. My son," he looked at Dante, old eyes lighting with boundless love. "Live. For Sophia. For her. For yourself." Then his eyes closed. His hand went slack in Mia's. His final breath slipped from his dry lips. Antonio Moretti died in the arms of the people he loved. No one spoke. The room fell into a choking silence. Dante held his father's body tight against him, his shoulders shaking violently. He didn't make a sound at first, but the tears wouldn't stop, soaking his father's silver hair. Mia held Sophia, covering the child's eyes from the heartbreak in front of them. But Sophia understood anyway. She wailed, the raw cry of a child losing someone she loved again. Ethan stood behind them, quiet, tears streaming. He hadn't known Antonio for long, but he understood loss. He had lived it. A siren sounded in the distance, growing louder as it drew closer. But it was too late. Too late for everything. The paramedics rushed in, but they could only shake their heads. They lifted Antonio onto a stretcher. A white sheet pulled over his body. Dante stood frozen in the ruined room, his eyes empty as he watched them take Antonio away. It was as if his soul had been ripped out. Mia set Sophia down and asked Ethan to watch her. Then she walked to Dante. She didn't speak. She simply stood beside him and took his hand. Dante trembled, his body on the edge of collapse. Then he turned and pulled Mia into his arms, holding her as if she were the only thing keeping him from falling into the abyss. And for the first time in his life, Dante Moretti truly cried, not silent tears, but the broken, choking sobs of a man who had just lost everything. Mia held him, letting him cry into her shoulder, her hand stroking his back gently. Dawn began to rise through the shattered window frame. Pale gold light spilled into the wrecked mansion, where blood and broken glass lay everywhere. But they were still here. Dante, Mia, Sophia, Ethan, alive, because someone had traded his life to protect them. Antonio was gone, but his legacy was only beginning. Antonio's funeral was held simply, in a quiet cemetery beneath a stand of ancient oak trees. There was no crowd, no unfamiliar faces, only family. Dante stood before his father's grave like a stone statue, expressionless, his eyes hollow. Sophia sobbed in Mia's arms, the child's cries thick with pain. Ethan stood behind them in silence, his hand resting lightly on his sister's shoulder in a wordless show of support. When the coffin was lowered into the ground, Dante didn't cry. He only stood there, looking at his father one last time, then turned and walked away. The days after the funeral were hell. Dante locked himself inside his study, the door sealed, refusing to let anyone in. He didn't eat. He didn't sleep. He didn't speak to anyone. Mia brought food and left it outside the door, but when she returned, the plate was untouched. She knocked, called his name, and only silence answered. Sometimes she heard the clink of liquor bottles knocking together inside. She worried until she could barely breathe, but every time she tried to open the door, he shouted at her to leave. Sophia grew withdrawn and frightened. One night, the little girl came to Mia, her wide eyes filled with dread. "Miss Mia, does Daddy hate Sophia? Why won't Daddy talk to me? Why won't Daddy hold me?" Mia pulled her close, trying to hide her own pain. "Daddy loves you very much. He's just very sad about Grandpa. He needs time." Sophia didn't speak. She only clung to Mia and refused to let go. The child was afraid of losing one more person. On the 5th day, Mia made a decision. She couldn't let Dante destroy himself like this. She went to the study door and pushed her way inside, ignoring every protest. The room was swallowed in darkness and the sharp reek of alcohol. Dante sat in the chair, empty bottles scattered at his feet. His beard was unshaven, his eyes bloodshot, his clothes wrinkled. He looked like a man without a soul, like a corpse that still breathed. Mia said nothing. She walked over, sat beside him, and took his hand. Silence. She waited. 1 minute passed, then 2, then 5. Then Dante spoke, his voice rough and shattered. "I couldn't save anyone," he said, staring into nothing. "Isabella, Marco, now my father. I have power, I have money, I have men, and I still couldn't protect anyone I love. I'm a failure." Mia tightened her hold on his hand. "Antonio chose," she said, gentle but firm. "He chose to save his family. That isn't your failure. That is his love." She turned to look at Dante. "And he wanted you to live. He wanted you to be happy. Are you going to betray him by sitting here and destroying yourself? Is that how you honor his sacrifice?" Dante looked at her, his gray eyes full of grief, and something else too, a flicker of hope, like a drowning man catching sight of sunlight. "I don't know how to live without guilt," he whispered. "I don't know if I can." "Then learn." Mia took both his hands in hers. "Together. You're not alone anymore." Dante collapsed against her shoulder and cried. Not the silent tears of the funeral, but sobs, the sound of release, the sound of pain finally breaking open. Mia held him and let him cry until there was nothing left. 2 weeks later, Dante Moretti reappeared, but he was no longer the same man. He announced he was stepping away from the underworld, handing over all the business to people he trusted. He began focusing on legitimate ventures, real estate projects and investments Antonio had started building years earlier. "My father sacrificed himself so I could live," he told Mia. "I can't waste that." One evening, Dante led Mia into the garden, the rose garden where they had kissed for the first time. The roses still bloomed beneath the moon, spilling their fragrance into the night air. Dante stopped and turned to her. He took both her hands, not kneeling, no glittering diamond ring, just the two of them facing each other under moonlight. "I don't deserve you," he said, his voice low and honest. "I'm a man with a bloody past, with enemies, with darkness that will follow me for the rest of my life. I can't promise a perfect life." He paused, swallowing hard. "But I want to spend my whole life trying to deserve you. Mia Thornton, will you accept being my wife?" Tears slipped down Mia's cheeks, but she was smiling, the brightest smile Dante had ever seen. "I don't need you to deserve me," she said. "I only need you, exactly as you are. Yes." Dante pulled a simple ring from his pocket. His mother's ring, once Isabella's, now Mia's. He slid it onto her finger, then bent to kiss her. A kiss, sweet with promise. Small footsteps pattered over the grass. Sophia ran out, radiant. "Miss Mia will really stay?" she asked, hope lighting her face. "Really? Really?" Mia knelt and hugged her, and Dante wrapped his arms around both of them. "Really," Mia said, her voice thick with happiness. Forever, a new chapter began, and this time, they would write it together. 1 year later, the Moretti estate was no longer the cold tomb it had been when Mia first set foot there. Laughter moved through every corner. Fresh flowers sat in every room, carrying fragrance and life. Sunlight poured in through windows that were always left wide open. And in the living room, Antonio's photograph hung in a place of honor, his gentle smile watching every step taken by the people he loved. Mia was now the director of the Second Chance Foundation, the charity she founded with Dante's support. The foundation focused on helping fire victims, poor students who couldn't afford tuition, and people struggling to stay afloat in life. In its first year, they supported 127 people. each one with a different circumstance, each one with a different story. I'm doing for others what I wish someone had done for my family when my parents died, Mia often said at fundraisers. Dante had fully transformed. He left the underworld behind and became a legitimate businessman, investing in real estate and technology. His company created hundreds of jobs for the community, especially for people with difficult pasts who needed a second chance. But more important than any business success, Dante came home every night to eat dinner with his family. No more mysterious trips into the night. No more urgent calls pulling him away from his daughter's arms. Sophia had come back to life. The 8-year-old laughed easily now, sang often, told stories without stopping. And 6 months earlier, she had called Mia by a new name. Mamma Mia. Mia cried the first time she heard it. Dante stood behind her, his eyes wet too. From then on, Sophia never called her anything else. Mamma Mia, I got a 10 at school today, she would brag whenever she did well. Mamma Mia, I drew this picture for you. Ethan had changed too. He finished his first year at Columbia University in the top 5 of his class, just as Dante had promised with the full scholarship. He lived in the dorms but came home every weekend to see his sister. One day, he burst into the house with his face shining. Mia, I got accepted for an internship at Mount Sinai Hospital. Mia hugged him, happy tears spilling down her cheeks. Mom would be so proud of you, she whispered. Murphy's Diner had been revived as well. Mia's foundation invested to help Eddie expand the place, hire 5 more employees, all of them people who had been struggling and needed an opportunity. Eddie, the kind old cook, cried when Mia came to visit. The girl who used to carry coffee to customers is my benefactor now, he said. Mia hugged him. You were the first person who was good to me when I had no one left. This is the least I can do. Antonio's office was kept exactly as it had been when he was alive. Every week, the whole family lit candles and placed fresh flowers beneath his photograph. Sophia told her grandfather about school. Grandpa, my teacher praised me today. Dante stood before his father's picture, his voice low and steady. Father, I'm trying every day. I hope you're proud of me. Mia laid her hand against the frame and whispered, Thank you for everything. 3 months earlier, they had held their wedding, simple and warm, with only family and a few close friends. Sophia was the flower girl, lovely in a pink dress. Ethan walked Mia down the aisle in place of her father, and Dante cried when he saw her coming toward him in a white gown. Tonight, like every night, they had a family dinner. Mia made pasta using the recipe Antonio had taught her during the days she cared for him. Dante washed the dishes afterward, muttering under his breath, A man's job is to clean up after a woman cooks. Sophia did her homework at the dining table, looking up now and then to ask Mamma Mia something. Ordinary, simple, happy. Mia stood at the window, watching Dante read stories to Sophia before bed. A year ago, she had been a poor girl with $32 in her pocket, racing against time at the train station to reach an interview that could have changed her life. Now she had a family, a purpose, a love. It had all begun with a decision to stop for 30 seconds and help a stranger. But the story wasn't finished. The circle still needed to close. Grand Central Station. 1 year after the fateful day, Mia moved quickly through the station concourse, her heels clicking against the familiar stone floor. She was in a hurry. A crucial meeting for the charity with major donors. The train would leave in 5 minutes. She couldn't be late. People rushed around her, everyone moving fast, everyone racing against time. Mia suddenly remembered that day. The same station, the same river of bodies, the same suffocating pressure of minutes slipping away. But she was different now. Her life was different now. Then she saw it, and her heart seemed to stop. A young woman sat crying on a wooden bench, the same bench where Antonio had sat 1 year earlier. The girl held a letter in her hand, her shoulders shaking in waves. Mia glanced at the clock. 4 minutes. She could still make it if she walked faster. If she just ignored it, if she just kept going, she would catch her train. But her feet wouldn't obey. She stopped. Then she walked over to the girl and sat down beside her. Are you okay? Mia asked gently. The girl looked up, eyes swollen and red. A young face, about 20 years old, streaked with tears. I got kicked out of school, the girl said, her voice breaking. I couldn't pay tuition. 2 semesters. I'm the first in my family to go to college, and now it's all over. She sobbed hard, her shoulders trembling out of control. Mia sat in silence and listened. The girl's name was Amy, a 3rd-year nursing student. Her father died last year of cancer. Her mother was seriously ill and couldn't work. A younger sibling needed care. Amy worked 2 part-time jobs and still couldn't afford tuition. "I don't know what to do," Amy whispered, desperate. "I've tried my best." Mia smiled and pulled a business card from her wallet. "Second Chance Foundation," she said, placing it into Amy's hand. "Call me tomorrow." Amy stared at the card, eyes wide, not understanding. "What is this?" "A full scholarship," Mia answered. "For students in need like you." Amy froze. "But you don't know me. Why would you help me?" Mia looked at the girl and remembered herself 1 year ago. Desperate, trapped, certain life was over. "A year ago, I was sitting where you are," she said softly. "Not on this bench, but inside the same hopelessness, the same feeling of having nothing left. Then someone gave me a chance. They didn't ask why. They didn't demand anything. They simply gave." She took Amy's hand. "Now it's my turn." Amy cried, but differently now. Not the tears of despair, but the tears of hope, coming back to life. Thank you," she kept saying, unable to believe what was happening. Mia pulled her into a hug. "Everything's going to be all right." The train whistle sounded. Mia lifted her head and saw her train pulling away, gliding past the platform and disappearing into the tunnel. She didn't regret it. She smiled. 1 year earlier, she missed a train and met Antonio Moretti, the man who changed her life forever. Today, she missed another train to give someone else the kind of chance she had been given. Her phone vibrated. A message from Dante. "Missed the train again?" Mia laughed and typed back. "You know me. That's why I love you. I'll come home on the next one. We're all waiting. Sophia's making cookies. She says they're for Mama Mia." Mia looked out at the flow of people moving through the station. Someone rushing toward the platform. Someone slowing down to read the departure board. And somewhere, maybe someone was stopping to help a stranger. The circle kept turning. 1 year earlier, Mia Thornton missed the train to her life-changing interview and met Antonio Moretti, the man who would change her life forever. Today, she missed another train to give someone else the kind of chance she had been given. Because kindness never truly disappears. It only finds its way back, sometimes in ways we could never imagine. And sometimes, what matters most isn't arriving on time. It's stopping when someone needs you. Mia and Dante's story had come to a close, but the lesson it left behind would last forever. Sometimes in life, we rush so hard after our goals that we forget the most important things around us. We get so busy that we don't see someone who needs help right beside us. Mia taught us that a small act of kindness can create enormous changes we never expect. She didn't expect anything when she stopped to help Antonio that day. She simply did the right thing, and life repaid her in a way she never could have imagined. That wasn't a miracle. That was the law of the universe. When you give kindness, kindness will find its way back to you. Dear friends, today's story ends here. We don't know how you feel after hearing it. In your real life, have you ever missed something important to help someone else? Or on the other hand, has someone ever stopped to help you when you felt most hopeless? Please share your stories in the comments below. We truly want to hear what you feel from the depths of your hearts. Every story you share is a precious source of inspiration for our community. If today's story touched your heart, please press like and share this video with the people you love. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the moving stories we bring you every day. Your support is a powerful motivation for us to continue creating quality content. Finally, we wish all of you watching this video abundant health, a life filled with joy and happiness, and days that pass in peace and good luck. Always remember that a small act of kindness today can change someone's entire life tomorrow. Thank you for listening. Goodbye, and see you again in the next video.